was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about kind of how you found your voice, because I think some people would say that it's more, you're running a bridge between, you know, really entertaining writing, but also academics, and do you find that difficult? I mean, do you ever find constrained? Do you find people telling you to be more academic or less academic? Or I'm just wondering how you do that navigation.
Yeah,
or, you know, or
that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked, and we had time for one more question, because, you know, I know that's sort of what I was brought here to talk about, was how one straddles the distance between the world of scholarship and the world of, you know, popular writing. I find straddling those two worlds extremely difficult, but I also know that I do it from a position of where there are not that many consequences for me professionally, like I have tenure, whatever. But like I think it's much harder for people earlier in their careers to think about taking the kind of risk and meeting both sets of standards. So I mainly just sort of, I think I'm here this week to say it's worth giving it a try, but it's very hard. And I find it very, very hard because I don't actually want to be on one side or the other. Like I actually feel like my obligation is to both. And so I feel strongly that the work I do should meet a scholarly standard, but it should also meet the standards of it needs to be entertaining and you have to get to the end of it. And I mean, like, you know, how I always think about it is, you know, readers who are not scholars are more interested in getting to the end of a story than to the bottom of an argument. So the way I write, and this is sort of related to the question of voice, although it's more to the question of structure, is to make an argument by telling a story, and to parcel out the argument such that you have to get to the end of the story. To get to the bottom of the argument, you have to get to the end of the story to get to the end of the argument, the bottom of the argument. But they both have to happen kind of at the same pace, which is very counter to how we think about how we write as scholars, where I'll lay out my argument at the beginning, and then I'll just demonstrate it to you. Well, you know, from a popular reader's point of view, like, we've read the first sentence and then you're done, like, who cares now? Like, I know what you're going to tell me. You told me. Hey, it's going to be that interesting that I should read the next 12 pages? No, probably not. So what I try to do is make a fair, I mean, I hope that my ambition is, and I'm sure basically I just clumsily fail to do this in different ways each time, but my ambition is to make a fairly sophisticated and intricate argument about ideas that people who are scholars can read and say, oh, wow, that's an interesting argument. But that I've basically smuggled it past the reader who would never want to hear that basically as a stated thesis. And so I look for stories that allow me to make the argument I want to make. I mean, often the story will suggest the argument to me. I think people would be suspicious that some of that's contrived. But I guess that's my solution, you know, to make an argument by telling a story. And I think actually the best historical writing in general does make an argument by telling a story, with a different emphasis on the two kinds of doing. I find it really frustrating because sometimes I do know that people read the story and it was just a story to them and I'm not sure they got the takeaway. And then at the end of the day, I feel like, yeah, but they finished the story. Like, it's like eating your peas. I mean, if they ate the peas, they did ingest them, and they're getting the nutrition. Like, they have to think about them as green vegetables? No. Like, you know, like if you're making, you know, your kids hate to eat spinach. Well, you put spinach when you make the meatballs because they love meatballs, and then you think, hey, I got them spinach. And you go, like, do you have, like, if you said at the end of the meal, hey, there was spinach in those meatballs. Like, you know, I'm always tempted to say that, but don't tell my kids. So I kind of feel like that. Like, okay, if someone read the whole long article about the birth of the baby scandal, they did actually learn a lot. They maybe didn't learn, ooh, Lepore is super smart and has an argument about so-so. No, but that wasn't the point, right? They were supposed to learn what a fascinating story that was. But you know, equally it frustrates me I think scholars probably read my stuff and don't realize it's all archivally based, and based, you know, that in the versions that are published in the New Yorker before they're published in the New Yorker, they have scholarly footnotes, and there are works of scholarship in my mind. So I guess, you know, it's sort of like the political problem with, like, writing about the Tea Party and the whites of their eyes. Like, people on the left told me I was too easy on the Tea Party. People on the right think, you know, I'm some fiend. Well, then clearly I was the moderate that I actually, in fact, am. If you annoy both people, if you annoy both, you know, if you're too scholarly for scholars and too popular for ordinary readers, then I don't know. I guess I'm straddling the distance. That's I guess the lesson of my midlife is trying to be comfortable, disappointing everyone. Thank you very much.